Self-cultivation is what I think of as an art form of being human. If you compare to something like a painter, the painter is using their artwork to communicate some meaning. And so it might make you laugh, make you cry, but you're feeling something powerful in terms of meaning from looking at a painting. Self-cultivation is dealing with how can I develop my personality so that my meaning in life is deep, that the way I show up in relationships is intentional, the way that I go about trying to carve a path through this world is healthy, sane, meaningful. It's trying to make the most beautiful representation of myself in this life that I have. My background spans two families that are very, very different. My biological family and my adopted family. My biological family was led by parents who, without fault of their own, were unprepared for being parents. They were immature and ill-prepared for the responsibility it takes to raise a child. That has to do with their background and the way they were raised. In society, there's certain patterns that get carried over from one generation to the next that we work out in our lives. And so my biological parents were well-meaning but unable to resolve conflict in the home. At an early age, all I knew was emotional warfare, stress, fighting, yelling, you name it. It was a very painful experience to grow up that way. But what happens when you're in a situation like that is, because of the way we sort of wake up to being ourselves, I didn't know any different. This was just the way my world was. Zoom ahead to my adolescence, and through divorce and infighting and lots of chaos, my family just broke apart. And I was really, really struggling. And then through this beautiful fortune, I was adopted into a family that was the exact opposite. Super loving, supportive, able to resolve conflict as a lifestyle. I was completely amazed by the contrast. And this was all led by my adopted father. His name is Gola Wolf Richards. Most of what I say in these videos is an extension of his work. He is not only very compassionate, very loving, but he's also an expert in this field. What he did is, alongside taking care of the damaged kid inside of me by being just a loving, beautiful father, he started to teach me the concepts of how it is you grow yourself out of these difficult patterns in your personality. My first client was myself, I like to say. And so over many years of learning and growing alongside him, I was able to heal out of depression and anxiety and learn how it is that I would go about helping somebody do the same. In my work, I approach everybody with an intimate understanding of what it means to be at a low point, to not be able to find meaning in life, to be worried to a point where you're unable to act. All of those things I went through from the earliest part of my life, and now have the alternative. And so in showing up to work, I'm showing up with having made it out. I made day-to-day experience profound happiness, all because of the learning that I did and the support I received. And so the reason why I educate is to give back to others what I was so fortunate to have received in my family life. Like with any art, it's always about principles and practice. And so back to the idea of the painter has to learn the principles of the craft. They have to learn how to mix colors, what brushes to use, what strokes make certain shapes. There's all these things that you have to learn about your craft. How does it work? And then The practice comes to, well, even if I understand those things, doesn't mean I can make a great painting. In order to make a great painting, I have to practice applying those principles day after day, canvas after canvas, until I can make something that communicates a deeper and deeper meaning over time. Unfortunately, in modern culture, we don't have an education that is focused well on the aspects of being human that require the same interaction. We're very good at educating on information, on skills, but there's a deficit in education for how it is we develop our personalities in a profound way that reflects the harmony of the natural world. The education that I'm focused on is trying to fill that gap. What are the principles that we can apply to ourselves and our problems that we can create beautiful humanity, like an art form? The hard part about human development is that the thing that we're trying to change is the way we see the world, the way we interpret. And that's inherently abstract because it's not something that you can touch or taste or smell. I can't take my personality and hang it up at the door when I get home, or take it out and shake it. What's wrong with this personality? It's immaterial. It's my perception. And so in trying to see the way I see, I can get confused. It can be difficult. The solution is the idea of self-observation, learning to see the way that you see in real time. And my father often has this phrase that he uses to describe this: being in the world but not of the world. So I'm in the world in the sense that I'm here with you, I'm talking to you, I'm experiencing this room, but at the same time I'm watching myself. And I'm aware of how I come across, of my intentions. Are they coming through or not? How am I using language? How am I doing my affect? Am I happy? Am I sad? I'm in control of the way my personality is showing up. This is the art form. I can't do this if I'm not observing myself. And so contemplative self-cultivation is to think very, very deeply about the world, about myself in it. Pull out what are the principles that can guide me through this journey, and then apply them as I observe myself to try to render my personality. And that's in terms of how I think and feel about myself, but also how my affect and how I affect other people. Have those be in accordance with what nature already has as healthy and balanced. The way I like to explain it is that it's like a lens of a camera, where you can zoom in and out from any scene. Zoom out and you see a big picture. Zoom in, you see specific details. So we can do the same with contemplation. Zooming out is, how does it all work? What are the biggest and most important principles that structure the universe ultimately, but then our place in it? And then how do I then look at myself in my individual situation and apply those principles? The most holistic orientation to start with is the idea that everything in the universe is changing. Change is the only constant, which is Heraclitus said that. The only thing that doesn't change is change. Knowing that, anything that we look at, whether it's material, looking at the world in terms of physics, biology, or psychological, anything that has to do with our experience of the world, of our minds, ideas and dreams, and on and on and on. All of those will be some aspects of change. That's how we can have a holistic, unified approach to dealing with our experience in the world. So then the next question is, how does change operate? In Chinese tradition, they use the terms yin and yang to represent how no matter what you're talking about in the universe, It will always be operating by a contrasting relationship between opposites, light and dark, up and down, left and right, hot and cold. All of these different relationships form the basic structure of any given system you can find in the universe. If you're talking about physics, you have electromagnetism and gravity. Gravity pulls everything towards a center. Electromagnetism spreads energy out from a center. If gravity wins and everything gets pulled in, nothing's left. If electromagnetism wins and everything radiates, everything goes far away from itself and nothing remains. It's because these two interrelate and cooperate over time that we have the persistence of our Earth and the moon and the sun, the stars. In our bodies, we find the same thing. I breathe in and I breathe out. I circulate blood through pumping motions of the heart. It's pumping, it's stopped. It's pumping, it's stopped. When I think thoughts, also there are relationships of contrast happening. I can't find anything beautiful if I don't find something else ugly. Beauty only exists in relationship to ugly. If everything was beautiful, how would you know what was different than the other? The same is true with something like an art, like music, where music is a relationship of sound and silence over time. If there's only silence, I don't hear anything. But a constant sound without end is pretty much equivalent to silence. It's only when they alternate that something happens and something else happens and something else happens in between silences that you get some kind of rhythm and you get some kind of music. Everything, no matter what we're talking about, if we're talking about people, birds, plants, stars, is contrast. In nature, when we look out to start to recognize what's going on in nature that is keeping it persisting, that keeps ecosystems happening, essentially, how is nature healthy? We understand nature as being healthy by understanding that it's always achieving balance between these extremes. So while there are opposing tendencies, like in an ecosystem, you might have foxes and rabbits. If the foxes eat all the rabbits, they'll have no food left and the foxes will die. If the foxes go away, then other species will suffer. And so the ecosystem is persisting by having constant balance between opposing tendencies through complementarity. Complementarity means that although there are opposing features, their interrelationship is dynamic and sustaining over time. So if I jump back out, I know that everything in the universe is change. Change operates by means of contrast over time. When it comes to an individual person, our growth over time is also based on a set of contrasts: immaturity and maturity. We all start young, independent, and unaware. And over time, as we grow awareness. And if we're lucky, and we cultivate that well, and we have people around us that help us cultivate it, we can grow towards maturity. But we can only achieve maturity through effort. Immaturity is guaranteed. We all start the same. But it takes effort over time of self-cultivation, of trying to learn better ways of thinking and feeling, that we can go towards being more and more mature. The more mature we get, the more wisdom we carry in our personality. And we become beacons of education for those who are immature. So, everything in the universe is change. Change is occurring by means of contrast over time. We grow from immaturity to maturity in our development. As we move along the timeline, what we're actually trying to manage as we cultivate ourselves occurs in our personality. So again, we have another yin-yang, and this time it's emotion and logic. Everybody who has a personality has some experience of emotionality, which is feelings, sensations. Think of any word relating to sensation paired with emotionality, and then logic, which is analysis and thought and discernment, judgment. These are in a constant balance as well, or they're not. And that defines the state of our health at any given time. When emotion is high, logic is low. That's a problem state. If my emotions are clouding my ability to make good judgments and make good decisions, then I can experience chaos in my personality. I can experience pain and conflict. But if my emotionality is high in terms of being compassionate and being fully experiencing life, but my logic is just enough higher to always keep it oriented towards moving in the right direction, in a direction of health, in a direction of being composed, then I find the right balance of emotionality and logic in my personality. So jumping back out, we zoom out and say, everything is change. Change operates by means of contrasting features over time, opposites and complementarity. We grow from being immature to mature by cultivating awareness, using efforts over time. We do that by balancing emotion and logic in our personality. Emotion is high, we need to bring our logic to the point and frame our life in an appropriate way so that we balance ourselves out. Lastly, now that we understand that emotion and logic are the dynamics that we're dealing with, the work of self-cultivation is about conflict resolution. We're going to have some conflict, and then we'll have to find some conflict resolution. We can only resolve conflict if we balance emotion and reason. If we don't balance emotion and reason, then we are apt to continue conflict and not conflict resolution. So everything in the universe is change, always shifting based on patterns. Patterns are the name of the game. Everything persists by some repeating pattern. So we've got our Earth that spins in a certain way on its axis. It goes in revolutions around the sun in a fixed way. Those patterns persist and persist and persist. They persist by means of contrast. So every pattern is some cyclical relationship between whatever contrast in the system, up, down, left, right, hot, cold. We're growing from immaturity to maturity over time by managing the habits around how do we deal with emotion and reason. And so if emotion is high as a habit, logic will be low. So as I learn to be self-aware and to have self-observation, to apply logic to any situation to balance out my emotional tendencies, then I'm able to create conflict resolution when faced with any conflict. That is a summary of what it means to be positively growing within human development.